He said one word after 10 months of silence, Daddy, and everything in the room broke open like a window you thought was painted shut. Yeah, that happened. And I was there holding his hand, with mustard on my fingers, because I'd split my sandwich with a little boy staring at a fogged bakery window like it held the last sun on earth. My name's Zora May. 6 years old, shoes too loud, braids a little crooked, and that morning the wind off Crescent Harbor bit through my jacket, as if it had something to prove the boy wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak, so I sat on the sidewalk, unwrapped my lunch, tore it clean in half, and slid it toward him on a napkin. You can have this. It's warm, he took a slow breath, shoulders loosening, like a knotted rope, and when I started humming that old gospel hook my aunt plays while she stirs greens, he scooted just enough that our elbows touched. I said, I'm gonna call you Sky because your eyes look like the sky right before rain. He didn't argue, which felt like a yes. And then you know how cities are. Someone across the street recognized his face from an alert phone up, whispering, That's the Harrington kid, the billionaire's boy. And in a blink, there were kind officers with soft voices and a cruiser that smelled like old coffee. Sky froze so hard I thought he might crack. He wouldn't move until I told him I'd go too, so they let me blanket scratchy cocoa. Sweet fluorescent lights buzzing a little mean, we sat on a bench at the station, and he latched onto my hand like it had a password he needed. And then the doors flew open. Cole Harrington walked in with his heartbeat in his throat. Not the man from magazines, not the man who builds apps and air taxis, just a father who'd been underwater for too long. He saw Sky dropped to his knees, and when his boy whispered, Daddy, the air changed. People stopped pretending work mattered more than that sound. Cole looked at me with the kind of gratitude that scares you, because it's heavy. You stayed with him, why I told him. Because I know what alone feels like, he nodded. Like I'd drawn him a map and asked the officers. Please don't take her away from him yet, not while he's breathing easier. That's how I ended up in a house that looked like a museum, that remembered to be kind, ceilings wearing chandeliers, lemon oil in the air, slippers too soft to believe. And in the den, I gave Sky my teddy. Sir Paws with the crooked ear, he tucked his face into that fur and sighed like the world finally fit. The next morning, under a stubborn magnolia, I told a dumb story about a seagull stealing my sandwich. Sky blinked at me and whispered more, just that, and Cole almost dropped his cup. He didn't say it out loud, but I heard it anyway. We can do more, and that's where the story should have ended. If this were a neat little headline, kid found miracle word, rich man, grateful cue credits. Except life isn't a 30-second clip, it's casserole and city meetings and neighbors who remember the last time promises walked down their street. Aunt Lottie, my aunt, who can cut through nonsense with one eyebrow, told Cole straight up, Don't mistake gratitude for a sale. You want to thank us, come see how we live. He did. He sat on our couch that sags on the left, looked at photos of cousins in caps and gowns, smelled onions and old books, asked questions that didn't make me feel like a prop. And when he said, build something with me for kids like Sky, I pulled paper out and started drawing a reading tree. You can sit inside a calm room for crying, without an audience, shelves low enough for small hands, lights that don't buzz like bees, I wrote. Listening house on top because names matter. Centers have clipboards, houses have soup. We found a judge with jasmine on her scarf who said, if you want it to last, do the boring parts right. A reporter sat on our rug and put the camera down. When Sky covered his ears, people sent crayons and small checks and half their weekend. And just when the paint was dry and the round room echoed with a soft kind of laughter, the pushback hit like a cold front signs at the fence. No billionaire saviors, Crescent Harbor isn't a brand, build trust, not buildings. And you know what? Some of that was fair. A man with everything shows up and says, I'm here to help. And folks remember the last 9 times. That meant someone else got priced out. Cole looked punched, and I told him, don't be offended. When folks question your halo, earn it or go home. So we held a listening night in the school gym. No podium, just chairs in a circle where knees could bump if you scooted. I stood on my short legs and said, we're not here to fix tonight. We're here to listen all the way to the end of each sentence, a daycare owner said. She feared we'd take her families. A teen said he'd never been allowed to sit in a soft chair without being told to move along. A teacher begged for real books on low shelves. Cole wrote it all down like a court reporter learning humility, and for the first time people looked at me and didn't see a trophy. They saw a person. The listening house opened small and glowed cinnamon from the kitchen star stickers on the ceiling. Sir Paws guarding the window. Sky finding words like seashells after a storm. And then came the letter with the heavy paper and the polite threat. An injunction. Zoning this influence that a lawyer named Martin Sloan calling us a well-meaning storm the day they chained the doors. I pressed my glittery name badge into Cole's palm. Chief listener, if they lock a door, we build another one, so we scattered and stayed barbershop after school, church, basement soup, someone's garage with quilts for walls. A hashtag caught wind. But the real work was hands and casseroles and folding chairs. I met a man on the bench across from the old house, coat, frayed shoes, polished like a habit that kept him human. You look like you forgot how to knock. I told him. He said he'd run a school out of his living room till permits and pride and paperwork took it. We brought Mr. Red in, and by nightfall, he had a plan for teens who don't fit the 8 to 3 box. Then a deed showed up, land on the edge of where the bus remembers to stop. No strings, we hammered and cussed and laughed and rehammered. When the wind knocked 2 walls flat, first thing we built wasn't a classroom. It was the circle. I found a small brass bell at the thrift and bolted it above the door. When I rang it, the sound jumped like joy and landed on people's shoulders. Not? Everyone came easy, a PR lady told me with a ponytail. Too tight, we need to shape your narrative, streamline your edges. This is about optics, Aunt Lottie said. This child is not a brochure. I told the lady I don't want to be shaped, I want to be heard. She didn't come back, and I slept better. And then the twist, not the legal one, a human one. Martin the lawyer walked in on a Tuesday with his coat buttoned wrong and said I made policy bigger than people. I'm here to fold flyers if you'll let me. We handed him tape and a chair, and he learned to show up without applause. Same week, a kid named Dre, who'd left the night the chains went on, came back taller and quieter, with a scar near his eyebrow and a letter in his pocket that said, I left because leaving felt safer. We held a circle. When a fight almost sparked behind the shed, Dre said, I'm tired of being the one who leaves. I said, me too, even though I'm 7. The room laughed just enough to breathe. We kept him, not because we lower the bar, but because we build the kind that people can reach without breaking their neck. The win arrived in pieces, a mayor who left his entourage at the curb and walked our rooms with his eyes open, touched a lopsided star, sky glued too hard, and whispered, I thought this place would be bigger. I told him it grows every day. He nodded, like someone just handed him a truth. His office forgot to brief the city, voted to partner paper with teeth so the lights stay on and the soup stays hot. I stood on a box at a forum and said, if your plans don't include the people you're trying to help, they're just ideas, not solutions, folks stood before. I finished solutions, I cried into Sir Paws's crooked ear backstage, because applause is heavy too, and still, the radio callers argued, these do-gooders are laundering billionaire guilt. And another voice, older and tired, said, or maybe they're giving kids a seat. Which one are you, Crescent Harbor? Be honest. We're not perfect. We get tired. We microwave grief like leftovers and keep ringing the bell. Anyway, Sky dances when he thinks nobody's looking. Cole learned to listen without moving his mouth, which should be its own holiday. Aunt Lottie keeps the keys in a dish, Mr. Red measures math with tape and dignity. Martin shows up with coffee and silence. Dre fixes wobbly tables before they wobble. I'm still chief listener, not because I'm special, because I stay, and here's where I leave you arguing a little. When a man with money walks into a neighborhood with history, is he saving or centering himself? When a city leans on a house like ours, is that wisdom or cowardice? When a black girl's kindness becomes a headline only when a billionaire enters the frame, what does that say about who we listen to and when? Tell me where you stand, what door you held, what door got slammed on you, what you think we got right, and what we need to fix. Drop your story in the comments. Push back if you need to, and if this hits something tender, like and subscribe so more folks hear it. Then name the one small thing you'll do this week to make your block feel like a listening house. You know what I mean? Ring the bell.